Hi everyone. So here we are, and we are now going to be moving on to project number two. Just so you know. So I'm going to open up Blackboard to reveal the project. So one of the first things that you've done is you've selected a topic, right? That you're really interested in, and I've called this project the self-interest posters. This is from handmade to digital. So we're going to go on a journey of going from hand all the way to digital iterations. You're going to make 5 posters that take you from hand making to digital, um, and in between. Some of you may stay handmade the whole time. Some of you may stay handmade to digital and figure it out. We're all going to explore all of them, but ultimately the final versions will be up to you how you make them. Some of you will jump to complete digital, um, but that's all good, and I want you to experience the entire array. The first thing you're going to do, though, is there's a sequence of readings and there's an exercise about tracing letters. And one of the things that I want you to think about this exercise is going to force you into figuring out your own personal relationship with typography and how you actually engage with it, not on the computer, but by hand. So one of the things you're going to do is, and I have this printed, so there's this exercise for tracing letters, and it's this, and my printer's running out of ink, so I apologize, but it's actually 2 pages, right? And it sort of takes you through the anatomy of letter forms, which I'm asking you to review from the Ellen Lupton book, and I've also given you some resources just to review certain anatomy. And this handout has different letter forms of different typefaces, right? And what you're going to do is the third sheet of the PDF has a blank page with some lines, grid lines, which you recognize probably from learning how to write when we were little kids, except this has some technical terms for typography, like the baseline, the X height, the cap height, the ascender, the descender. And what you're going to do is you're going to fill this page with trace letter forms from these 2 pages, right? So you can trace them however you want. You can overlay and literally take your pencil and trace them. You can freehand them if you want to. That's really great as well. One good thing to do is if you don't have a light box, you can use your window. So you can tape the letter forms, tape them onto your window, and then take your blank sheet and put it on top and trace through that. A window is a really good light box. So that's the first thing, and then you're going to do that and you're going to post them. So you can fill this sheet with as many characters as you want. This is, again, for you to get comfortable with letter forms, their intricacies, their particular anatomies, the way the strokes function, and there's serifs, sans serifs, and slab serifs on these, so you can experiment, so you can start getting a sense of what each form, each letter form, how it is, how it's made, how it sort of is sort of like unique characteristic. So that's the first part. The second part of this, which is what really is the main exercise, is the cut paste from handmade to digital. And it's going to be in 3 parts. This is part 1, is week 1. So week 1 is very restricted. Week 2, you're going to be very loose. And week 3, we're going to start really pushing it to a different place. So one of the things you have to remember is typography evolved from handwriting through into letterpress, right? So Gutenberg invented the letterpress in the late 1500s. And letterpress, looks like this. Letterpress is all handmade, right? So this is a copy of the Declaration of Independence, the U.S. Declaration of Independence that I bought in Philadelphia. Benjamin Franklin's little print shop here in Philadelphia. And if you know history about the U.S., you know Benjamin Franklin was also, one of the many things he did was he was a printer. So this is using, you can see this is all hand set. These are very long columns of text. Remember at that time, this was sort of posted everywhere on the streets. Very small copy. You can see the ink blotches because, of course, it's little metal. Now it's a lot of metal. Back then it was a lot of wood. Little cases of letters that were each hand set. And the leading, which is the lines in between, were actually pieces of lead that were inserted to create the leading, which is where the term leading comes from. So it was all handmade, sort of back in the 60s, 70s. These little letter sets got really popular. So these are letters that you rub off, right? So you take a piece of paper here, and you rub these off, and you can create compositions, and you can create posters and things like that, right? So these you can still find on Amazon. and they're actually really fun. They're kind of like very vintage, I guess, but they're very fun. So what you're going to do in this exercise is you selected your subject matter, because I'm putting these away. You selected your subject matter, and you are going to create a series of 5 posters. And each poster is unique, okay? They're a family, but each poster is unique. It's a different aspect, it's a different feeling, it's a different idea, perhaps. So for example, let's say that my subject matter that I'm selecting, it's spices, right? So I can think of spices, and I can think about the history of spices, I can think about where specific spices come from, how are they used, I can think of like recipes that use spices a lot. I can think of like culturally, what cultures really rely on spices and how they are used. So your research part that you did was partly finding one particular long form essay that sort of informed your world about this particular subject. So I'm thinking spices, and then what I could possibly think about is like, okay, what are some adjectives that I can give spices, right? Like I can think of like very, like if I think of a spice like cinnamon, it's very like light. If you take the powder and you blow it up, it's very light. It sort of flows. I can think of like a spice like chili can be really like strong and really like I can think, how can I think of a strong spice, or I can think of a fiery spice, like an adjective that's really active, so that you can generate an idea from that. So for example, if I said that I'm just going to generate a composition about chili pepper that's really, really spicy, how would I do that? It's very hot. How can I make type be hot without making flames? Again, you're not illustrating in this. You're thinking through the idea conceptually about how to give this particular spirit to this particular poster. So what you're going to see, okay, this is all type, no imagery. You'll see this in the handout. Okay, you're going to be working with 11 by 17 posters. So what you're going to see when you open the file is you're going to see a PDF, which is a grid, blank pages of a grid. So you're going to do 5 of these. This is 11 by 17. Right, and you see it has faint lines. I want you to adhere to that grid. That means don't go in the gutter. The first week you have to adhere to this grid. Okay, this is a modernist grid for all intents and purposes. 4 columns by 3, very modernist. So print 5 of these, right? And then you're gonna see that you're gonna get a set of dummy copy. And I just printed a few of the pages. So this dummy copy, you have a sans serif and you have a serif face. Each poster can use either a sans serif or a serif. You cannot mix them. So you see large type, then you see small type. Okay, and I typed this up and I just set it. I didn't kern it, I didn't track it, I just set it there. So you have to deal with that situation. Okay, and treat this as dummy copy. Yes, it's an essay on here, but you do not need to make any sense of it. You're thinking of your content. What is the subject matter of this posters? Not this. Okay, this is just dummy copy for all intents and purposes. So all you're going to do is, you're primarily going to use an X-Acto knife, a glue stick, and your grid. And all you need to do is simply sit down, have some fun, and you're going to cut out letter forms. Okay, so for example, let's say you want to use the G, and again, I'm thinking through, you don't have to be super, precise as you're cutting. You can cut it like this. You don't need to cut around the letter form. You can just neatly cut around into a square. And I'm just using this as a form. I'm not thinking it's a G. Okay, right now, don't think about that. Think about making the composition have the spirit of the particular adjective that you're describing, your subject matter, right? So you take that G, you put some good old glue stick, you glue it. This is back to being a 2-year-old playing in kindergarten. Take this here, right? And then you figure out, oh, okay, so, maybe I'm going to set it here, right? So create my composition. So you're starting to think about cutting and pasting and generating a composition, a set of compositions that really have the spirit and the idea of this particular subject matter that you are researching, that you're working with. These keep in mind, I want you to think about the hierarchy, the order that you're arranging things, the detail. Okay, so the small copy, you have small copy. Again, don't treat this as like you're trying to make sense and make it read that way. You can treat it as much as you want. A trick is you can either, if you want to use like columns of text, you can cut right into it. You don't have to worry about it. The only caveat to that is that you must adhere to this grid. So if you're going to use one column type, you need to cut out a section that fits into one column. If you want to use two column type, that fits into two columns or three, however you want to do it. Okay. If you want to typeset line by line, you can cut out individual lines and paste them down. I want you to be very conscious of your craft and how neat you put this down. To a lot of you, the first one is going to be very difficult because you're like, what am I doing? And what I would do is I would sit on your desk and just cut some stuff out and start playing around. This is about playing, okay? You are staying completely vertical. All the text you put on this page has to read this way, okay? There is no rotating letters. There is no flipping letters. Do not cut them in half. Do not cut them. Do not do anything. You literally are going vertical so that the engagement with this composition, these first 5, is completely vertical as we traditionally read in the Western world. So think about that. Okay, so I also put in there, in the folder for you, I've put some pictures as examples. So for example, you see it there, a student cutting things. You're literally cutting, and then examples of a set of these posters that were made by a former student of mine. So you could start to see how it goes. So that's what this assignment is about. So you have 5 of these 11 by 17 posters to make. So you're going, once you make them, okay, you can pin them up on your wall, and then you photograph them together. And then you post that to the discussion board. So that's those 5 posters pinned up. Make sure you photograph clearly. This is all type. If you want to take your picture and make it black and white, do that. That's even better because then we just focus on the form. So I want you to be clearly conscious on the composition and focusing on the forms. Okay, the posters don't have to make any sense. You don't have to write out the word of the subject matter that you're talking about. As a matter of fact, don't do that. Just get concerned with form and creating interesting compositions that are hinting at particular aspects that you're interested in exploring the subject matter. Okay, like I said, the first one will be the trickiest. It always is. And then you start to realize that it's really about you having fun, and it's really you exploring how you see typography and how you see particular things. And it's trying to bring that out into your typographic work and your work as a designer. So look, like my favorite quote, and I don't know how to not say this is funny, but like looking forward to seeing what you do. It's so weird because it clicks into my head. Like it's like, you know, you're editing video and you click that little like sequence at the end or the beginning. So let's see what you do. If you have any questions, you know, you are always welcome to email me and let me know, you know, like we can chat. Okay. All right. Bye.